On the agenda tonight, we're going to be having a listen to the original recording session for Face It Alone by Queen back in 1988. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So this is a follow-on from the last video we did where we had a listen to Face It Alone and we analysed it and found that it had been heavily pitch corrected. I think a lot of you could hear that anyway. And from the comments that I got on that video, a lot of people linked me to this original recording session so we can hear where the audio was taken from and we can get a bit of a vibe as to how things were going down in the studio on that day. But we can also hear Freddie's vocal without the pitch correction. So we're just going to run the audio and see what we can hear just up until Freddie stops singing, because then Brian continues to play lead lines on the guitar. It just sounds like experimenting with melodies for the whole remainder of the demo, but we'll just have a listen and see what we can hear.
You just have to give me that first guitar. After this, you have to give me a guitar entry, yeah? Not there. Guitar.
Something so deep and so dear tonight extols beside your cries getting so is so loud and clear. And something that I did it's close and the sun begins to lose
So, I mean, that is the total vocal that we have that we can listen to. And when you listen to that first verse, we have two takes that Freddie did. And by the way, this is being recorded on a mic that's just in the room, in the studio. It's not the vocal that they used for the final song. So the final vocal that you hear on the release is the vocals that we're hearing. They obviously recorded a couple of takes or a couple of ideas for melodies for the verse and just I don't think it was an overdub, probably just on a couple of channels, and those two channels were just, you know, audible rather than just muting one of them and then moving the other take slightly later on for another verse and then bringing that up. So you had two vocals going on at the same time, which I think were just ideas for melodies, and you can tell listening to it that Freddie's just kind of coming up with melodies. And I think it is a bit of a push to call this a demo, because when you create a demo, generally they are used to take to recording studios or play to record labels or artists, and it's a full song. So, I mean, you might have a drum machine. It's basically just a rough version of a song, but everything's pretty much in there. So you've got all your melodies vocally, you might have the harmony lines in there as well, you'll have your guitar tracks, your drums, your bass, but like I said, it might just be a drum machine, and it might be, nowadays a MIDI bass, just something quickly to put down. But you've got the demo. The song is pretty much finished, but when you're listening to this, there's no way that this strikes me at all as a finished demo. It sounds like just coming up with ideas, and they've then turned it into a song to then release now. So, I mean, it's a classic case when you can hear Freddie just experimenting with lines in the background, and when he has that na 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 na, that line, I mean, that actually sounds like an ad-lib just trying to find a melody somewhere, but now we know, I mean, it's a great melody, so it works really well. When it's in that final release, you won't question it, but listening to just the things that Freddie's doing, it just sounds like vocal extemporization, really. So we'll listen to this verse section where we've got the two verses, as we know them now, playing over the top of each other, which means that they have been recorded independently. But let's have a listen.
Something so dear and so dear tonight explodes beside you, cries in your soul.
And when we're listening to this vocal, I want to just focus your attention on pitch correction and how, to me, this doesn't sound so bad that it's got to be totally corrected because Freddie's so out of tune. And we're going to jump into that more in a second. But what we're hearing with this audio is the same as me maybe recording a vocal here and then playing it through my speakers, and the microphone's now picking up the sound out of the speakers, so it's nowhere near the same quality that you'd get from a vocal or when Freddie actually recorded this vocal that's already in the desk and now it's just playing back. So when people say that, yeah, Brian's mentioned about them working a miracle in the studio in order to put it all together, this isn't the audio they used, they had the takes already. So the quality of it would have been fine, and using pitch correction is destructive. This is something that I mentioned in the live stream, that once you take an audio file and you process it and therefore manipulate its pitch, it's now going to be a lesser quality than what you started with just from going through that process. If you then pitch correct it again, it gets even worse, and it's just destructive all the time. So if you were to pitch correct the same bit of vocal 5 or 6 times, you would end up with something that sounds like it should be, on a Sega Mega Drive. For people in the comments who have said that maybe it was part of the restoration that they needed to do it, it's actually the opposite. The original vocal without pitch correction will be of a higher quality than that of the one that's now on the release. So we know that they have these two vocal melodies that have now become the verses, but I think it was more just Freddie, playing around with melodies. And you can hear that one's being sung over the top of the other. They're playing back at the same time. So we know that they haven't used this in order to get the final track, because it would be impossible to separate these two up. And it's being played through speakers, not Freddie singing into a mic. So from hearing this, we know that they had all of the vocals that we can hear on that final release in the desk, so it is on tape and they have a record of it. So that's why they were able to use pitch correction, because they had something of a high enough quality to begin with, just in case you can't get your head around the concept of hearing a recording being played through speakers and then the microphone picking it up. It's like me singing like this, going na 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 na, and then na na na. So as you could tell, for that second time I disappeared and I went away and sang and just left the microphone in the room recording everything. And the reason why they would have been doing this is because this sounds like it's just at the ideas stage. So they're recording everything that they're just getting down. Brian might be thinking of guitar lines and playing just through some melodies and might find one or play one that he thought was good. So then they go to the mic that they just had set up in the room, rewind it, listen to what he did again. So now that becomes part of the song, and now he goes and records it properly. And that's what Freddie would have been doing. I think the whole band would have been doing it. So I don't think that you can call this a completed demo at all. But yeah, it has just been all stuck together in the end from all these little bits that they did record. So to the people that said, well, the vocal might have been so off, so out of tune that they just had to pitch correct it because of maybe Freddie's health at the time and various reasons that people have written in the comments section. So what I'm going to do is focus your attention on this line that I've actually sung a few times. As I said, it's very melodic, and this is something that we did focus in on with that previous video, and I put over the top of it the two versions that we hear in the final release, and it was just copied and pasted because we know now from that session that we just heard, Freddie only sang it once, so they had to copy and paste and just do the best that they could with it. So this is the audio from the session that I isolated, what we've just heard, and now I'm going to put over the top of it the audio from the pitch corrected version. And it's going to look a little bit complicated because it's overlapping, but we've got the natural version in yellow and the pitch corrected version that they released in white. So zooming in, it's going to make it a lot clearer, because to the people that were saying the vocals must have been so off they just had to do it to get it to a releasable state, having a look at Freddie's vocal here, he is bang on the F sharp 4, and remember the yellow line is the session, the vocal that we just heard with no pitch correction. When we come down here, Freddie was slightly sharp of the E4, but then came down to pitch, and this is easily close enough. You know, when you're listening to that session as we just did, at no point did you think, oh, this sounds awful. You know, it sounded in tune. It just sounded like Freddie singing, and he was really accurate. And here's the proof. Even, you know, let me just move this over to the left, because this yellow line, this is the original audio. He's singing an E4 there, and look how bang on he is with that. Anyway, let's go back to what we were looking at. So his natural vocal is here, slightly sharp of the E4, but I mean, we're talking a matter of cents here, you know, maybe 5 cents, maybe 10 at a push, but it's not going to sound out of tune. The pitch corrected version has been snapped over the E4, and you can see as it came down, because the software is just changing Freddie's voice pitch wise, it's been taken straight to the E4. You lose this expression going down into the E4. So as we then come down, now the pitch correction has snapped Freddie's voice to the D4 when in fact he was slightly sharp. Something I say in that previous analysis video about Freddie's voice is that sometimes he would be slightly sharp of the note. When he's saying sharp, it made it sound more dramatic, because that's what singing sharp sounds like. You know, it's not going to sound as, I mean, this is going to sound mechanical directly on the D4. It's going to have expression in there, and that's exactly what we got from Freddie's voice on the D4, but they eradicated it and replaced it with this one, which is the pitch corrected version directly on the line. But anyway, so that really disproves the two theories, that it was either a restoration thing, it wasn't, or that Freddie was so out of tune that it had to be done. That wasn't the case either. You know, let's listen to it and be really strict to think, right, if there are any notes that you might pitch correct, we'll have a listen and see.
Out.
When something so dear and dear to light edged down beside you, cries and your soul is so loud and clear.
I mean, you could argue, but for me, this is expression that I was going to say, actually, the pitch monitoring software picked that up from Freddie, where he started flat on that final F sharp 4, and you can hear the way that Freddie changes his vocal by leaning into it a little bit more to get himself to pitch. Have a listen again. It's that, and he leans into it at the end there, getting on to that F sharp 4, and bang on. So again, I don't think that if I was listening to that I would change it at all. I wouldn't select this first part and move it up to get it in line with the rest, because it's a journey with a note, because he's taking you to that destination, and it's something that obviously Freddie isn't doing, thinking about, oh, what I'm going to do is start a little bit flat and take it up. He's just singing the way that he sings, and you get this kind of thing, like I said in that other video. So let's listen on.
Something.
I mean, maybe in that that last note maybe was a little bit flat, but again, we're really nitpicking here. And I mean, let me have a look at this, because I think there's an extra bit of expression there that they might have got rid of. Let's have a listen to that, because it sounds like it goes na 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 na. It does a little bit of a slide up and down. Let's have a listen. Yeah, it kind of we see it here on the pitch monitoring software. And let me see if I can actually go back to the original, I mean, the release, not the original, because we're listening to the original vocal from the session. Let's have a listen. They've got rid of it. They have pitch corrected it into a flat line without the that little drop down. They've changed to just a straight note. And I'll tell you another thing that they've done. They've faded out the note, because when we get to this last section, let me get rid of that, take it back. Right at the end here, Freddie goes sharp. He goes, and you can see it. He actually does go a semitone above. So they have faded out this vocal so that you don't hear this bit when it goes sharp. But it's the same vocal that they've actually changed. And we know that because when we overlap the audio previously, we can see how it matched up perfectly on this first note where Freddie just nailed it. And now here they've edited it, here they've edited it. And look, and this is great because we can see it's up here. That the little dip here has been eradicated into a straight line. So, I mean, it's just an example of what they have done, how they've manipulated it, but that's not even nitpicking. This is literally changing what the artist did into something that is going to suit this pitch correction software more, because you won't be able to spot it, because nobody will know. Obviously now you do know that Freddie sang something different, but they just erased it and set E4 as the value that they wanted, because then they can just stick it to the line. But it's really interesting to have a listen to the original session audio so that we can see exactly how far the song was to being completed and hear the original vocals from Freddie without the pitch correction. So anyway, thank you guys for linking me to this. As I said, let me know what you guys think. Keep those suggestions and requests coming for future videos in the comments section below. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!